Welcome to episode 235 of the Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast. Another Saturday edition as we enter, surprisingly, the month of August. And I guess month 4 of the pandemic in the United States as the numbers continue to rise of COVID-19. This is Corey Richmond, joined as always by Jason Brooks. Jason, last day of the single life before the missus returns. How you doing, and how is the repairing of the apartment going before you have to go and back to married life?
Yeah, no, things are good. I'm just doing a lot of cleaning today, and just making sure things are ready for when she comes home. So yeah, no, things are going okay. Things are going pretty well.
7 days till my birthday, 9 days to yours. As we go and celebrate another year of our lives. So we did a watch along last week. Once again, thank the guys on Facebook, Wrestling Life, everybody there. So it's been a crazy week in wrestling. This is going to be more of a, just overview type of show, not talking about, the shows in general from the week, more of like a topic-driven show. This week I wanted to actually start with a little bit with women's wrestling. Now, we knew that over the last couple of weeks that AEW was going to be doing a women's 16-person tournament. Or the joke going around on this podcast has been they don't have 16 people on the roster. On the show on Wednesday actually, we found out that one of the participants was going to be the former Funkadactyl, Ariane. Cameron. Well, her real name Ariane. Who's favorite match.
So let's see. Impact gets Deonna Purrazzo, and AEW gets Cameron. She's one of the worst wrestlers I've ever seen in my life. As a matter of fact, I remember when she got released, and they talked to Naomi because Naomi was her friend, and they kind of brought them in together. And Naomi's like, yeah, she didn't give a shit. Like, she didn't like wrestling, and she wasn't very good at it, and didn't improve. And now she's going to be now she's in AEW?
Remember one of the clips that was online was like she was a meme where the fact that she pinned somebody, she pinned some random female wrestler backwards. Like she did the Kamala gimmick, where she didn't realize she had to turn the girl over. It's almost
like as good as AEW's been, it's almost like they want the women's division to be bad on purpose.
I mean, of course we're kidding when we say that, but the bigger thing, at least on my end on this, besides the fact that who knows how they're going to find 16 people to be in this tournament, when half of the good people in the roster either, are in Japan and can't come over or are hurt, like, the Chris Statlanders of the world. But I know that you want to get the most important thing with most people is social media and everything else. But this tournament we found out is, yes, it's going to be a blind draw. You're going to get a color thing and all this stuff. You can't go and find out, once you get your name, you can't change, all that stuff. But the big thing coming out on Monday, and when we did the watch along, we didn't realize was that this whole tournament is taking place on Mondays, right before Raw. That's great. All right, you're in a wrestling mode. But it's taking place on YouTube. This is not happening on the shows that are happening on TNT where people actually watch, and you're winning a ratings war and all that other stuff. But, Jay, what's your thoughts on the idea that you're going to have to watch the show on YouTube,
Yeah, it's fine. I don't want to watch it on Wednesdays. I don't want to watch Cameron on my TV on Wednesdays. I want to watch her selectively. So I'm fine with it.
Are you going to watch on Mondays at 7 o'clock? You could even remember this is on?
It's going to be on Mondays. Yeah, I mean, I'll watch it. Maybe they'll actually sign women who are good. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they'll decide to sign some women who actually are good wrestlers. So if they do, then I think it could be interesting. There's plenty of women who are new up-and-comers who we haven't seen, who we don't really know a lot about. So maybe that'll be something. If not, because here's the other thing, Corey. Forget that it's on YouTube, right? Because AEW Dark's on YouTube, and AEW Dark has some really, really good matches oftentimes, right?
How often are you watching it though?
AEW Dark, I don't watch it that often. I mean, but again, because I like wrestling, but I like stories more than anything. I like wrestling and then stories leading up to it, and then you have a good match to culminate that story. A match for a match sake isn't always my cup of tea, unless it's like a new up-and-comer. Like I watched Brian Pillman Jr. because I hadn't seen him. Now that they're doing angles in AEW Dark, maybe I'll start watching it a little bit more or whatever. So anyway, as far as this women's tournament, here's the thing, Corey. What's the point of this? Is it just to get women some time? Is it that well, they're not going to get anyone over. I mean, it's on YouTube. It's a blind draw tournament. I mean, I don't think it's going to get anyone over. I think the way women are getting over is through either being really good wrestlers like Sheeta, or being, good babyface characters like Big Swole, or being really good heels like Britt Baker or Nyla Rose. Those are probably the four most over women on the roster. And I think after that, it's like a huge drop off. So, and I think Penelope Ford could get there, but like we need to hear from her or whatever. So that's what's gotten some of these women over. But in a bunch of those cases, it's kind of been mic work and things like that. Not counting Riho and stuff like that, who's not here. So I don't think the tournament is going to get anyone over. Maybe it's a way to show new talent. Corey, I don't know. I have no idea what the point of this is.
Yeah, and that's, I think, is one of the major problems.
Unless the point is to eventually have a women's tag team title, which I think would be literally the worst idea ever.
Way too soon for that, yeah.
If there's not a women's tag title in NXT, there certainly should not be a women's title in AEW. If AEW gets more women, has another show, you know what I mean? Like, for as much as we can rip the WWE women's tag team titles, now that Sasha and Bayley have it, they've done a really good job with the belts. But yeah, so.
Yes, I mean, like I said, it's interesting where this goes. I mean, if the idea is just to maybe set up other angles, so you have more than 2 women's feuds at a time. I mean, right now AEW has 1.5 women's feuds going on. You have whoever is going to most likely face Sheeta at All Out. And you have the really good Britt Baker when she comes back, fully healed from injury, versus Big Swole, which I think is the slow build is really doing well, especially on what they're doing with the fact that Britt Baker can't wrestle because she's not fully healed yet from the leg injury. And, they're doing the best they can because Statlander's hurt. Penelope Ford is, she's not hurt, but, she's on TV when she's on TV. And you got to figure out what you're going to do with Nyla Rose, so I mean, if what's going to happen and like I said, and also you've got the newer girl is part of the Dark Order. So I mean, you're doing slowly building things here and there. We'll see how that goes. But if the idea of this tournament is to develop new feuds and new ideas, that's cool. But my problem is, a lot of people, for YouTube wise, watch Being the Elite, and every once in a while you get a Being Elite reference on the show on TNT. But if people aren't going to know, yes, we did a watch along, so we weren't listening to the audio. But how many times besides the one graphic did they even tell you that the show was on YouTube? Like, I went and looked back and realized it. So I mean, YouTube is great, and our G's president is banning TikTok or whatever other things, another social media thing. That's for another show, of course. But the idea of there's a lot of people on social media, but when your bread and butter is your TV, you got to let people know quite a bit on your TV.
No, Corey, you can't be putting these matches on TV. You can't be putting Nyla Rose and Cameron against Penelope Ford and the latest women's ham and egg on TV.
And don't have the tournament.
You could put it. Why not put it on YouTube? They put AEW Dark on YouTube, and that's sometimes for up and comers. Why not put it on YouTube? What's wrong with putting it on YouTube? I have no problem with it. I think it's a good vehicle. And if there's a good match, they could maybe highlight that on AEW Dynamite. They could talk about the tournament. They could do like a weekly, 30-second, minute or two package on the women's tournament and the matches that were good or not good. I think they could weave it into Dynamite while also trying to hook viewers into saying, I want to watch it on YouTube. NWA Power was on YouTube and did wonderful. So if you have a good product, people will find it. I don't care that it's on YouTube. They're in a ratings war. They're other than the 5 women we mentioned, their women's roster leaves a lot to be desired. Mm-hmm. People are going to turn off. If they're watching Cameron in a match against anyone, they're turning the channel. So they're in a ratings war. So I completely disagree with you. I think the tournament itself, doesn't really make a lot of sense. I think they should do a tournament to crown, for the number one contender. I think that would be interesting. But they're doing this gimmick tournament. Maybe get some women over. I don't know. I get the other question is, Corey, are you going to now? Again, we do a wrestling podcast, so we're the marks of the marks. But do you intend on watching this
on Monday at 7:00 when it's on? Most likely not. I mean, it's gonna. This is one of those things that's gonna be really like a word of mouth type of thing, where just like for years when it came to Impact Wrestling or ROH or a lot of these fringe products, and maybe because it's AEW, there's a better chance, but if I see, the John Pollocks or, some of these other people who have clout in the industry are telling me that this was a really good match or something happened that matters, there's a better chance I'll watch it before the show. But, maybe the first week because of just see how the concept works out.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
But
what I was thinking. So I'll watch the first week. I'm sure you're going to watch and you're going to tell me if a match is good or not good.
It's got Cameron, so maybe
if they're doing angles, that if they're doing angles, I might watch. I won't watch full matches, not a chance, unless it's like the good women on the roster. So I will probably watch sparingly, and if there's a good match or two, maybe I'll watch that. So we'll see what happens.
I fully, and we'll end this right here on this, but I fully expect that most likely Nyla Rose will, they'll lose. Whoever they face will most likely lose, and it'll be because Cameron or Ariana, whatever her name will be, screws up, and then the following Wednesday, we'll see, Nyla Rose kill Ariana maybe in a match, that will last like 60 seconds, and that's where this all leads to just Nyla, killing somebody maybe, or in 2 weeks, or the unlikely story of her, pushing, being the whole entire idea for the team, and they go to the finals, or something. I could see a story where it just basically ends with Nyla killing her, because she screwed up or something. So that could be a story they tell, which may not be the worst thing in the world here. But Jay, let's move on. On Friday on SmackDown, Jeff Hardy apparently might be done with Sheamus, maybe not. Neither one of us loved the idea of Jeff Hardy being pushed in storylines with his personal life that much when it came to the whole entire idea of his past with alcoholism.
Although I'll be honest, and as much as this is horrible of me, but listen, we're none of us are perfect all the time. When Sheamus said to him, I couldn't defeat you. You had the angel on your shoulder. Basically, Booze was your it was like a handicap match. I know it was very offensive. It was very offensive, but he's like, Booze was your, was your other partner. Very offensive, but I don't know. It was actually like kind of funny. I don't think he meant it to be funny, but I don't know. Anyway, go ahead.
But it brings up a point for me, and I don't know if you'll tell me who cares, but I think Jeff Hardy with crowds, like I said, everything right now is going on without crowds, so it's who cares. But I think Jeff Hardy, when there is crowds, still has that charisma that people care about him. But how do you book an aging star who most likely shouldn't be in the main event angles anymore, but most likely, at least in my opinion, shouldn't be booked on the only way you're booking him is on the fact that, he's a recovering alcoholic. I mean, how do you book a guy like Jeff Hardy to maybe not be the top guy in the company, but to still be, a mid-level star and somebody respectable, I
mean, he is a mid-level star. He's more than a mid-level star. He's not a main eventer. Upper mid-card is I guess, the term they use, right? So right. I'd say he's the upper mid-card guy. And I think that's it, right? They're trying to figure out ways to get him involved. Now, it was dumb how they did it, but they're trying to get him involved, and they're trying to keep him involved. I think it's fine to have him be a guy who's, I think he's younger than AJ Styles, or he's the same age as AJ Styles, and we're not talking about AJ Styles being old. Right.
Daniel Bryan, you book him as just a tough badass.
Well, that whatever, right? I mean, the bar thing we both agreed was silly. If your point is that they shouldn't be booking him as an upper mid card main event possibly level guy, that I disagree with.
No, I don't disagree.
But do I think they should be doing this thing where he's like a recovering alcoholic? No, absolutely not.
So like I said, I think it's a tough idea of like, how do you go? I guess my point is, how do you go? Like, what type of stories do you want to do with a guy like a Jeff Hardy?
Good stories. And maybe babyface. I mean, again, if we were writers, would be probably working for the WWE. But I don't know. I mean, there's ways to tell good stories that doesn't involve him being an alcoholic. So, we'll see what they do, and if they get creative with him and kind of tell some different stories. Maybe the next feud is with him and AJ Styles for the title. I think that would be for the IC title. I think that'd be interesting. And I will say that the IC title definitely is meaning more with AJ as the champion. As much as I vehemently disagree with his political views, he's an extremely talented wrestler, and he's really made that title mean something. So maybe that's the next avenue they go down. I think that'd be interesting. Jeff Hardy against AJ Styles for the IC belt at SummerSlam, maybe.
That could be an interesting idea. Or you know what? Maybe you go and this guy named Kofi Kingston's out for another 5 or 6 weeks, and maybe you pull the Big E card and you go Big E and AJ at SummerSlam, or
I mean, whatever. But I mean, we're talking specifically about Jeff Hardy, so that's one idea that we could have for him.
All right. WWE decided they're adding another pay-per-view the week after SummerSlam. WWE Payback is returning. Never really thought this was a major pay-per-view to begin with. It was usually the pay-per-view that was, I guess in May, usually after WrestleMania most years. It was, like, as you say, Payback. It was, all right, I lost at Mania, we're doing rematches, basically.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to say.
And that's turned into Extreme Rules, right, basically? Yeah.
But apparently, Payback is returning. It's going to be the week after SummerSlam. So, I guess my point of view on this is simple. Usually I ask you first, but I'll just get mine out of here. Why are we adding another pay-per-view, especially the fact that, we have stale wrestling? Why do we need another show?
Payback's a bitch. We're going to hear that like 20 times the week leading up to the show. I don't know, Corey. It's nonsensical. It's nonsensical that they're going to have a show.
I mean, they already have $10.
Why are they having another show? Like, what's the point? How are they going to build a show up in a week? Maybe they don't give a shit. It's like, hey, here's a show and there's a show, and I don't know. Maybe SummerSlam's not as long. Maybe it's not as big of a show, and you have the matches that would have been on the quote unquote pre-show, and you put those on Payback. Maybe it's a kind of a double build. It's a build to SummerSlam and a build to Payback. If they do it like that, that could be smart. So, for instance, like maybe the main event of Payback is like AJ Styles against Jeff Hardy or Big E for the IC title, and that's like the main event, which I think would actually be pretty cool. So, I mean, there's ways they could do it. Basically, have SummerSlam because SummerSlam was a pretty long show. It was like a WrestleMania length show. Maybe not that long, but it was getting like pretty long. So if you shorten the length of that and you put those matches on Payback, I mean, they could make it. They could make it okay.
I mean, I guess you could see that. I mean, I know initially the talk was a month or so ago that the week after that there was talk about possibly doing like an Evolution 2 with the women's division of having a second one of those shows. And I guess there's still talk about that, but I guess we don't know when that may or may not happen. So I guess that's still in the works possibly, but we'll have to see when and if that show does happen. So I would much rather have seen an Evolution 2 show than Payback.
But I wouldn't want an Evolution 2 show a week. I actually would rather them have Payback and if they do like a double show, then have Women's Evolution 2, because I mean, Sasha and Bayley are going to have a big match at SummerSlam, either against each other or against others. So I don't want to see them have a big match and then they're going to have a match, the next week. That doesn't make sense to me. So we'll see what happens though.
Okay. We're flying through some of these topics, so it's good. All right. So neither one of us got a chance to hear the promo on Wednesday when we did the watch along. I love the Moxley finding out who was possible contender at All Out would beat it. Love how the show ended where all of a sudden Darby Allin's facing him. Kind of made no sense a little bit after that. But what do you think of the MJF promo saying he wants to be the number one contender, be your candidate.
I think so. I think he kind of forgot his ending, cause so like he was done with his promo, then he started waving, then they played his music, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, and John Moxley, I'm challenging you at all." I think he kind of
went online afterwards, and he basically said that wasn't supposed to happen. They played my music too fast.
Yeah. It was either that or he forgot or whatever. I mean, it's fine. Who cares? No, it was good. It was good. We talked about it during that show on Wednesday, our live show. Is it too early? I think it's too early, personally. But we also talk about the hotshot booking they've done with people, Brody Lee and Cage and all these guys. And MJF, they have built him up real slow. He's won a lot of big feuds. I think he's undefeated.
He's undefeated, yeah.
Yeah, he's undefeated. He's won a lot of big feuds. He's won every feud he's been in because he's undefeated. He's won a lot of big matches. So, why not? Why not shake things up and give him the shot? People love him. So yeah, I think this is not a bad time.
See, and I think it comes down to the idea of I love the promo. It really built my interest for the match. But I think it just comes down to the simple idea, if you're not going to put the title on him, I don't do this feud now. Because I think he is the guy to win the title, because I think he's your homegrown guy. I think that means something. Because at some point, you got to put the title on somebody who's not a WWE cast-off. I know the two WWE cast-offs are two of the biggest guys in the company, or two biggest draws in Moxley and Chris Jericho. So those aren't just like, oh my God, I'm putting the title on, Matt Cordova, who just came into the company, the former Zack Ryder. But I think when you're going to do it, I don't think, I think it's a great idea to have an undefeated champion, all those things, which makes him look super strong. And I just don't know if it's the right time to take the title off Moxley, because I think there's still a lot of things you can do with Moxley as champion.
And we also have to remember, Corey, we do this rush to change the title. MJF's 23 or 24 years old, or 20, whatever he is. Mm-hmm. If he's going to be in the company for years, which
next 25 years,
yeah. and I think he said 25 years because Jericho's 49, by the way, because I think he's 24. Right. I think he said 25 years specifically because Jericho's 49. So I thought that was funny. If that was the intent, which I think it probably was. But he's young. If he loses the match, he can just whine and complain and do the heel thing and then come back strong. Like, it won't hurt him that much if he loses this match.
I don't disagree, but I don't know. Like I said, I think it would be cool, the fact that your homegrown guy, when he does win the title, it would be a pretty big thing. And
but that's what I'm saying. It would be, right? So that's why you hold off. You wait a little bit longer. You wait a bit.
You know what? Then you don't do the match then. I don't know. But like I said, it looks like.
But Corey, you have to have if we can't do this, the title needs to mean something, and he's got to lose the title. You can't, and also, we're not gonna have a match because he's gonna lose. Then what are we doing here? We're gonna put him against Cage and Brody Lee and these people that we know he's gonna beat every time. That's not something that I want to see, knowing that there's no way the champion's ever gonna lose. Like with Cage and Brody Lee, we knew he wasn't gonna lose. Jack Swagger, we knew he wasn't gonna lose. This is the one match where it's like, he could lose. It's possible, and to me, that is more gripping than whether he loses it or not. So we'll see what happens.
And I guess, and that goes into another subject I wanted to bring up, and this goes into a little bit bigger discussion here. So at the end of this week's AEW show, we found out, that on next week's show, Moxley is facing Darby Allin for the AEW Championship. So, and this brings up 2 points. One, it was a very similar thing that a lot of people had a problem with in regards to Monday Night Raw, where you have at the beginning of the show, Randy Orton goes and makes the challenge out to Drew McIntyre for the SummerSlam challenge. And before the match that Drew McIntyre has at the end of the night, before Dolph Ziggler comes out, it was a non-title match, and WWE explained during the midweek saying it's no longer a title match, but he accepts the challenge. So you know that Dolph Ziggler is not winning the match. We know Dolph's winning anyway, but you have the challenge made out for All Out, and then all of a sudden at the end of the show, you have Tony Schiavone saying, next week we have a world title match, Moxley versus Darby Allin. So it's kind of like, all right, maybe Allin's going to win, but you've already kind of set up the idea that MJF is challenging Moxley for the title. Then next week you've got Moxley versus Allen. In the back of your mind, aren't you kind of as a fan saying, how is Allen going to win the match if you've already kind of set up Moxley versus MJF?
Well, a couple things. One,
I'm overthinking.
I have said this to you before. I always like when a champion has multiple things going on. He should. He should have multiple feuds. He's the fucking champion. Everybody should be going after him. Everyone and their grandmother should be like, I want to be the champion. I want to win that title. So he should have a lot of balls in his court. He should have a lot of things going on. I don't mind that. I don't love that they randomly just said he's going to have a title shot. I guess I was actually more annoyed by that. It wasn't like, you build up Darby, you have a video package of Darby Allin saying he wants the title. They talk about his record and how he's earned this title shot. It was kind of, he's getting a title shot next week. So I don't mind that he's getting a shot next week. That's fine. It was the presentation of it. That was the problem to me, to be honest with you. But he's going to have a title shot. We know there's no way he's going to win. But we knew that about Swagger. We knew that about Cage. We knew that about Brody Lee. So yeah, I think it'll be a good match for sure. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and so let's get into. I think for the first time in a while, we actually know. Well, we actually know what the two shows are going to be on next Wednesday. So these are the cards. Overview. AEW is going to have Cody Rhodes and the new Matt Cardona, the former Zack Ryder, going up against.
Isn't it Cardona?
Oh, sorry, Cardona. Who cares? The former Zack Ryder.
Jesus. Poor man.
When you hear
the poor man's name doesn't mean anything to you.
When you hear Matt Cardona, do you think does that say star? I mean, if you hear Zack
you keep calling him by the wrong name.
Okay.
Why didn't he change his name? Why is he just going by his regular name? He needs a gimmick name. Matt Cardona. That sounds like your tax man.
I think I don't disagree. I kind of know. I kind of have an idea why he's going by that name, because of the fact that him and his former tag team partner, their YouTube show is so big. They have this YouTube show where they do with toys, which is like a huge YouTube channel, and they go by their real names. I guess they have like.
The fuck does that mean? Who cares about that? You're on a TV show. You're a following. No one is going to watch his show. No one's going to say, oh, Matt Cardona, toy guy, is on AEW. Let me watch AEW. No, they're going to watch the toy show because he does a toy show.
Okay, I'm not saying no. I'm just saying I can understand that. I think that's why.
Well, it's a dumb reason. His name is.
Like I said, you have.
Jason Brooks, the wrestler. No. We need a gimmick name.
Right.
Matt Cardona. Come on.
I don't disagree. It's not a great name. They're facing Alex Reynolds and John Silva. You got
that should be a competitive match.
Yeah, exactly. The Elite and FTR versus the Dark Order. We've got a 10-man tag after this week of an 8-man. I'm sorry, this is a 12-man tag after last week's 10-man tag. Should be really cool. Jericho and Orange Cassidy in a debate with a special debate
moderator,
which that could be interesting. I wonder who that's going to be. Maybe we can get into that, but who knows? MJF will provide an update on his campaign. Another good promo. And then we got Moxley versus Darby. And then on NXT, we've got another triple threat match. We've got Damian Priest, Oney Lorcan, and the debuting Ridge Holland. We got an NXT tag team title match. The O'Reilly and Fish returning versus Martel and Eichner. Number one contenders match for the women's title. Rhea Ripley and Dakota Kai. Bronson Reed versus Shane Thorne. And then a non-title match, Keith Lee versus Cameron Grimes. I think both those shows sound pretty good on paper.
Yeah,
NXT almost sounds a little better.
I think NXT is definitely a stronger show. Definitely sounds like a stronger show. But I think there's a good chance AEW is a more entertaining show because you're going to have the MJF promo. You're going to have the Jericho moderator debate, which is going to be hilarious. So that's where NXT is always going to struggle. I think NXT's show as a wrestling show has been better, continues to be better. As an overall show, it's kind of the same thing we've been talking about.
And that week, and on that Wednesday, their competition with return sports. So basketball, you'll have the second half of the Oklahoma City versus the Laker game, and the start of Toronto versus Orlando. So I mean, that's some interesting competition sports wise. And then I didn't take a look to see what the hockey playoffs is, but I mean, I'm sure
The hockey playoffs start next week?
Hockey playoffs start today. They're starting right now.
Oh, they're not doing what the NBA is doing, where they're having regular season games. This is just the playoffs.
Yep, playoffs start today.
Oh, that's pretty cool. No one's watching hockey over.
I don't know, but I mean, like
if they're wrestling.
ESPN.
Yeah. It's basketball. I mean, hockey is a very niche sport. People love hockey. I'm not ripping hockey, but it doesn't have that cachet that NBA has or whatever.
Right. No,
no, but you're right. I mean, it's live sports, right? And I know the NBA rating was really good the first night. I know people are a bunch of black men kneeling, so they don't want to watch, but somehow a lot of people seem to be watching, and the games have been really good. So yeah, I think that's going to be a difficult competition. We'll see what happens. It's very interesting that the ratings went up for NXT. Again, these margins are so fine. 100,000, 150,000 people. The margins are just incredibly fine. So I still think AEW will win. If you ask me what I think is going to happen, maybe not as in dominating fashion as we've seen over the last couple of weeks, but I do think they'll win.
Yeah, and maybe we'll still have baseball at that time if not every team is coronavirus central at that point. But fingers crossed. We have a halfway decent fantasy baseball team we're doing together. So like I said, it's going to be interesting to see what happens on Wednesday. Nobody knows what the hell WWE is doing on Monday. I don't even know if we have any matches announced at this point. But, Jay, so we've kind of skirted around one of the biggest topics of the week coming out of AEW. One of the central points of their announced team guy who usually is, when it comes to an indie talent, and I think would have most likely helped the Warhorse Cody Rhodes match with maybe giving some context on his story and a lot of stuff he's done in the past.
He's kind of like, I think he kind of is like the glue that for Tony and JR, because they can be, they're like really old school, and they're great. JR sometimes still struggles, but Tony has really been good. I've been very impressed with him.
And Taz was a good fill-in.
Oh yeah, and Taz is much better than he's much better now than he was in the WWE, because a lot of it, they tell him what to say or whatever. But as just an announcer, he's pretty solid. But anyway, Excalibur is definitely the one who kind of ties Tony and JR together.
Right. So back, I believe it was like 13, somewhere like around 15, 17 years ago in PWG. Excalibur was not on the broadcast this past Wednesday. And a couple of weeks back, video had come out online in regards to him, Kevin Owens, Human Tornado, and Disco Machine, where there was a angle in PWG where there was Excalibur used the N-word a couple of times in a promo, and now on the backs of the Speak Out movement and all of the other Black Lives Matter, and how Tony Khan handled Sammy Guevara in regards to the Sasha Banks issue, it's became very obvious that he most likely was taken off TV as a precaution on, handling on how this happened. We're not going to go and, play the video by any stretch, because, what was said is indefensible, but it was part of a wrestling angle.
Here's what he said.
Mm-hmm.
During the match or during the promo, whatever he said. It was about replacing him in the match with the two wrestlers that you mentioned. You think you can replace Disco Machine with a racial slur against Latinos and a racial slur against Latinos? And then I think was that it? I thought they may have said this wrong. I know they said that he used the N-word.
Yeah, it was racial slur against Latinos
and then a racial slur against black people. Okay, right. Yep. So, and Kevin Owens, by the way, also was involved in this and also used the N-word. And so yeah. So now I didn't know this. Excalibur owned PWG.
He's one of 6 people who's a part owner of the company.
Yeah. So, and again, it kind of goes into and this is kind of what Forbes said, and it was interesting that, hey, he was part owner of the company. He wasn't just a wrestler trying to get himself over. He was part owner of the company. He didn't need to use that word. And so I guess, they've apologized since then. Owens has apologized. Excalibur's apologized. It's difficult, man. Like, as a black man, to hear a wrestler use, I mean, the history of racism in wrestling is so bad.
Yeah.
It's such a bad history. And, I think about, and PWG's audience, obviously very white audience or whatever, but,
And Latino, because of and
Latino.
It's very
and Latino. But I don't know if it's that many people go to shows, whatever. But, like, if you're a Latino in the audience or you're a black person in the audience and you're hearing that's like, come on. And, and I don't know if that was just to incite people and blah, blah, blah. Obviously it was, but man, we just don't need that stuff. And this wasn't like, in the 1970s. These are 2 guys who are, Excalibur's what, in his mid-30s now? Maybe
I think in his 40s, yeah.
Maybe in his 40s. Kevin Owens, whatever. Kevin Owens is in mid-30s. Right? Like, these guys were younger, but they still should have known better. Does that mean that he needs to be fired? I'm not saying that. I mean, it happened 15 years ago or whatever however long ago it happened.
15, 17 years ago, right?
I think it's hard to it's hard to punish someone severely who did something horrible and said something horrible so many years ago when he was not employed by you. We had an incident with Josh Hader, who's a pitcher from the Brewers, who said something, a racist thing on Twitter that came out that he said years ago, right? So, and I don't think they did anything, but we know baseball's history with racism. So, it's hard. I think keep them off TV. I think, suspending them that makes sense, right? Yes, it happened 17 years ago, but you still did it. You know what I mean? You still did it. If he committed a crime 17 years ago, that would be, people would talk about that possibly. So it's better if he stays off TV for a little bit. But AEW is in a tough spot, Corey. They're supposed to be the progressive company. They're supposed to be the company that had the Black Lives Matter sign up, right? They don't have many prominent black wrestlers, which is a problem that they have as well. But everyone in the company, all the EPs are all white. Everybody who controls everything in the company is white. The announcers are all white. It's tough. It's tough. And so I don't know. We'll see what happens. Obviously, the best thing right now is to keep him away from things. Maybe he says an apology on the air. I think that would probably be appropriate, to be honest with you. So we'll see what happens. But it's unfortunate because I like Excalibur as an announcer very much. And you know what? Here's the thing. He probably isn't a racist, but he did a really racist thing, right? And we talk about like the whole I'm not a racist. He did a really, really racist thing. And hopefully he doesn't have that hate in his heart. Maybe he does. I don't know. Hopefully he doesn't. So we'll see. But I think a suspension of a month, keep him off TV, and then maybe you kind of get back to things after a month. Maybe he does an apology. Maybe this goes away. Because, Corey, you told me about the story. I didn't even know about it. So get him off TV for a month. Maybe he does a mea culpa. Maybe Tony Khan says, hey, we need to do more. Like, we need to make sure that we're promoting Black Lives Matter more often, making it a bigger part of our shows. So, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's tough, like in a lot of these situations where, as a white host on this, it's hard to go and have certain opinions on these things without making yourself sound almost stupid. But I mean, only thing I guess I would say, and I agree the fact that this happened, 17 years ago. It was part of a storyline, and these people are playing characters. I mean, so it's a little bit of a rough situation when you're a part owner of the company. So you would have, and also, yes, one sixth part, but you should have some sort of creative control where something like this happens.
He has creative control.
Right,
I mean,
that's
yeah.
Right. I mean, yes. Apparently, Human Tornado, wrestler who's involved in it, said, that he wanted, to bring, race into it, to bring heat towards his character, to make him come off as more as a babyface. I mean, only thing that's always weird is the fact that these guys are playing characters just like actors in movies. When you have this type of language in movies, like like the N-word and all these things being spewed, like when you see a movie like Django Unchained and a lot of these.
Wow, that was a movie. That was a movie based on slavery. That's not a great.
Like a lot of these Quentin Tarantino movies where you have the N-word said like 400 times, or a lot of different things where it's just like thrown out as just whatever, and you're sitting there going, all right, it's okay because these actors are just playing roles and these writers are just this part of their script, and it's like sometimes it's a little hard to say, all right, these guys are playing actors in a movie, so it's okay, but a wrestler's reading a promo and then it's not. So it's like sometimes it's a little hard for me saying, how do we go? Like, does someone like a Kevin Owens in WWE now, is there any blowback on him, or does Excalibur take all the blowback as a result? Like, does anything happen?
I think here's the thing. One, AEW has promoted itself as a progressive company.
Sure.
Sonny Kiss, Nyla Rose, being transgender, right? So they've promoted themselves as this progressive company. So now they're in a position where, hey, you've promoted yourself as this progressive company. This guy said this thing. Now the actor thing and the wrestler thing, I understand what you're saying. To me, they're totally different because it's his line. Like he didn't have a writer write that for him. That was his thought and his idea. So that's push that aside. The biggest racist in wrestling has been Vince McMahon. So let's put that, make that perfectly clear with the stuff he's done. But that being said, yeah, I mean, Owens probably nothing will happen to him because WWE's really, they say they're progressive, but they don't really do much in terms of that. AEW has at least seemingly tried. That's why they're in a tough position because it's you're progressive and then you have this guy say this and then like what do you do with him? So
it'll be interesting to see how long he's out for and how it's handled if they go and do anything with like a PSA type of thing at the beginning of the show, or when he comes back, if there are subtle little jabs that are said about if a Scorpio Sky or someone says something in a promo that's a slight conversation thing, but not actually saying something about it, where they say something but don't. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I hope they don't do that. I hope they need to stay away from that. That'd be bad. Okay. I think that'd be a bad idea. I think they just need to promote. They just need to do a better job of promoting, Black Lives Mattering and making sure they're making that more of a part of their company. So and hopefully we'll see. I mean, Corey, not for nothing. Did they have a black wrestler on the show on Wednesday? I don't know if they did. They had the tag, they had the 5-man tag, they had the tag at the end. I think Nyla Rose is African American. I'm not sure. She is. So she was on the show for a minute, cutting a promo. She doesn't count. She's terrible.
Hey,
she was
on the podcast.
She was on there. So those two, and then and I don't mean she doesn't count as a black woman, but she's not like an impactful character. That's what I'm saying. It's not an impactful character on the show. And she was on it. So other than Nyla Rose,
an insert promo. But yeah,
other than Nyla Rose and Cameron, I don't think they had a black character on their show.
Yeah.
So that, and Corey, that's a problem. Mm-hmm. That's a big problem. So maybe, and so to me, I don't care as a black man. Like I don't care so much about like you could say whatever you want to say. We're gonna promote social change and blah 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 and all this other stuff. it's what you do as a company. It's what you do as a brand, and it's what initiatives you're putting in place. What systems you're changing. So we'll see if this forces them to say, maybe we really need to like think about changing some stuff with our broadcast, with our show. So if that happens, I think this will be for the better for sure.
So, I mean, it's always tough to get from a serious subject like that moving on, but let's go to something a little goofy to lighten up a little bit. And usually when I say goofy, I don't usually bring up New Japan Pro Wrestling, but let's talk about something that came up over the last, I guess, week and a half. Apparently this was Okada's idea, maybe the best wrestler in the world, but Okada might be just taking the fall for this one, and most likely is a Gato idea, and whatever. But we're going to have the KOPW title/trophy starting at the end of next month.
Good luck explaining this one. Go ahead.
Okay, so apparently it's going to be a 8-man tournament where you're going to have four matches, and they're going to be gimmick matches.
Well, what's the belt? What's the belt mean? Is the belt 4 gimmicks?
Yeah, kind of. So it's basically
it's like the hardcore title.
Kind of, I guess. This is with one of the biggest problem with this whole entire thing is you have this super credible company, and I know you have limited guys available to work right now, but you basically are going to have 8 guys in an 8-man tournament. The 4 guys who win your matches are going to have a 4-way match. The winner of the match will be able to pick their stipulations and defend this title, which is not really a title, until the end of the year. And they'll have to go and do matches, and the winner of the match will go and tell their opponent what type of stipulation match it'll be. What in the world is Gato/Okada thinking here? I
mean, obviously they're throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. It's an awful idea. I mean, I know this podcast is very pro New Japan. I think you're more pro New Japan than me. I'm just kind of, I just feel like I'm in the middle on things. Well, you know me, I always get the service. I usually get the service during the Super Juniors, and then I'll have it during the G1 or whatever. But I mean, it
wasn't a shot, buddy. It was just saying.
Usually you do. Usually you do. You figure out how to mention it usually whenever we talk about New Japan that I don't have this.
That wasn't the point this time.
Which is actually kind of annoying, but whatever.
I love you, buddy.
I think. Listen, they do some great things, and they have some great matches and great angles, and they have some things that are really dumb. They're in a tough position now because they don't have a lot of their roster, so they need to come up with gimmicks and tricks and make things mean something. So they're trying it. Is it a good idea? Absolutely not. Is it something they're trying to do that might not work? Yes. Am I going to kill them for trying it? I mean, no, because for the most part, they have a history of doing some good stuff. Like, and I know we're going to mention probably the New Japan US Cup. That's a really good idea. So it's like, you throw one bad idea, one good idea, one bad idea, one good idea. So I think it's not that big of a deal. I certainly won't be watching any of the matches, but it's a way to try to bring new fans in and we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, and who knows? You know what? He has more good ideas than bad, and maybe this all works out. And, in the middle of the year, I'll be sitting there, watching a New Japan show and be like, you know what? This was kind of an entertaining little match. And I'll be like, hey, look at that. Gato had a good idea. I thought it was crap to begin with, and it worked out. I doubt it, but hey, why not? So, and like I said, the other reason why I brought it up, because I thought it was funny, and it felt like kind of one of those WWE ideas where you're sitting there and going, why is this happening? So I like that more than anything else. But let's get to the good and New Japan kind of idea. As we know, with COVID-19, unless you are a natural-born citizen, you can't basically go back to Japan, which we know Kairi Sane will be going back with her time WWE being over. But as a result, a lot of guys are not in Japan right now. The Jeff Cobbs of the world, the Tama Tongas. So as a result, they're doing a New Japan Cup USA, where the winner will get a shot some point against John Moxley. It's going to be interesting to see how often John Moxley's in New Japan and if they would do something in the U.S. with him. But they're going to do an 8-man tournament starting Friday, August 7th. What's your thoughts on this? I think this is a pretty good idea to either, one, get people to maybe get the service, even for maybe a month to see the tournament, and two, maybe maybe develop a new star and, give people a reason to care about New Japan or in the USA. Yeah,
no, I think it's a good idea. I'm actually looking to see who's in the tournament now. So it's Carl Fredericks, one of the New Japan guys who's training. Kenta, Jeff Cobb, Tonga Loa, Tamatanga, Brody King, Chase Owens, and David Finlay. So it's some interesting names. I would love to see Tamatanga win the tournament. Yeah, I think we talk about, a singles push for him. We've talked about that for a long time. I think this might be the time. And he's positioned to do that. He's going against Brody King in the first round, and then maybe David Finlay in the second round. So, yeah, I think there's some interesting names. It'd be cool, Tamatanga and Tangaloa in the main event of this, in the tournament finals, I should say, because they would be on a course possibly to meet each other. So brother versus brother, I think would be interesting. And I expect one of them to go far because of the ties to the Bullet Club. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But
I think more of maybe Kenta, setting up Kenta versus John Moxley at some point.
Maybe, but they've already had Kenta go for the title. You know what I mean? So yeah, maybe you're right. I mean, they could really have any of these guys win except for maybe Cobb and Brody King and Chase Owens and whatever. Or maybe they spring a surprise and David Finlay is in there. He's like my least favorite wrestler, but whatever.
I like David Finlay, but I hear you.
Yeah.
So, like I said,
I think it could be a fun little tournament. And I'm interested to see Carl Fredericks and so maybe when is that starting? Is it August 7th? Is it next week?
Next Friday, yeah.
So it starts next Friday. Yeah.
It'll be every Friday for like a month, basically. It's
I wonder if they could have put more guys in it. There's only 8 guys in it. I wonder if they could have gotten more U.S. guys to be a part of that.
I mean, maybe they could have, but I guess, maybe 8 they thought was a good number. 4 weeks of basically like a month worth of programming, because they did another series right before this, which kind of led to Carl Fredericks developing as a standout guy. Mm-hmm. With the leading to, I guess it was a match against Jeff Cobb, which was like kind of a story that they told over like a month period. Yeah, which was kind of cool. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they go, how successful they are. Because like I said, they're doing their story, Japan-based stories, the US-based stories, and like I said, if this leads to, John Moxley maybe being on the show at some point, and I find it a little interesting that if AEW is going to let their champion right now go on that show, we'll see.
Well, he may not have, but I guess so. Here's the question: you may not know this. So this is New Japan World, right? Mm-hmm. It's not a pay-per-view or whatever, but it is in the U.S. So could he be on the show?
That's what I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think no matter what, whoever wins this tournament is going to beat him for the title. I do think that's going to happen. I don't think you do this tournament to have that guy lose to Moxley. But, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's a lot of interesting things on that. So let's see. I guess one of the last things to talk about here today, Raw's ratings were okay for the first 2 hours. Third hour, which had two good matches, two matches that were highly publicized. I mean, you had the Asuka versus Sasha Banks match for the title, and then the non-title match turned out to be an Extreme Rules match of Drew McIntyre versus Dolph Ziggler. I think it was like a 1.4 rating. Why do you think the third hour? I know the third hour usually.
Well, the third hour is hard. I mean, the third hour is just gonna be hard.
Well, why do you think it just died like that? I mean, it wasn't like it was
you're watching
but
you're watching 3 hours of empty arena wrestling. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to sit through 3 hours of wrestling, man. It's hard. I mean, these third hours are never good. They're never good. And they had, I mean, the Ziggler McIntyre match I could care less about, but the Asuka Sasha match was tremendous.
Yeah.
So I don't know. These things are kind of hard to explain, but like we've talked about, some people are just out on these empty arena shows. And if you get a couple people say, I've been watching Raw for 2 hours, I'm going to go do something else. And it's summer, I'm going to go hang out on my back deck. I'm going to, I do that. I'll say I've been watching sports for a little bit too long. I'm going to go on my back deck and kind of chill out and relax for a little bit. And maybe that's what people did. It only takes a couple 100,000 and then see a rating.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy. I mean, I find that interesting to see how.
And I'm going to say this. I think both Raw and SmackDown were better this week. And I'm going to attribute that to Work Shoot Wrestling podcast because we did a deep dive on them last week. We ripped the WWE creative process. And the two shows, the combined two shows, were maybe their best two shows that they've had, like Raw being good and SmackDown also being good. They haven't had that in a really, really, really long time. I can't remember the last time both shows were good in the same week. So congratulations to us. You're welcome. Donations at Work Shoot Pod. Send us you can DM us and send us money if you want. But no, both shows were solid, and the ratings are just, they're just gonna continue to be what they're gonna be. Vince on the call, things that they're gonna shoot up, and things are gonna be fine. And so we'll see. But again, that's his stockholders, and he's got to make them feel comfortable with how things are going. So we'll see.
All right, you brought it up. That's the last subject of the day. We had our second quarter numbers. The big thing coming out of it, which I brought up on Twitter at WorkShootPod, numbers better than even expected. Still counting the people during their 90-day non-compete clause. I just keep on saying. So why did we release all these people?
I mean, we talked about this at the time. I mean, Dave Meltzer, and this is why we do this thing where, rumors, it's bullshit. Oh, these guys don't know what they're talking about. Oh, they don't know anything, so on and so forth. Meltzer said WWE's on pace for record profits this year, even with no fans, because of TV, because of the network. They were on record for record profits. They were on course for record profits, and they still are. And they released all these people. This is why whenever you tell me about corporations, I can't do it. I can't do it, because to release these people when you are already making money hand over fist is such a bullshit move. It's such a shit move. And for guys like Gallows and Anderson to be like, we're gonna blame Paul Heyman. Get the fuck out of here. What does he have to do with it? He's not signing your paycheck. Again, we don't want to blame corporations because we're scared of them. Because I don't know why. But for him to release all these people and to furlough people for any amount of time, to take any money out of any of these people's paychecks who are working hard. If you're losing money, okay. If you're Impact, maybe, I get it. Ring of Honor, I mean, they're a big corporation too, but Ring of Honor is not making money from Ring of Honor, or the company's not making money from Ring of Honor. They're making money from their TV, Sinclair Broadcasting, right? So I don't know, Corey. We talked about how horrible it was. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. And it's again, it comes down to the whole Undertaker documentary where Undertaker was talking about how much Vince cared about him and loved him as a person and how great he was. We haven't seen any signs of that in all these things, all these Dark Side of the Ring documentaries. All these wrestlers from the 80s and 90s talking about stuff that Vince did, and all these all the different storylines he's had of how Black people are portrayed and how Latinos are portrayed, and now we're seeing it with releases, to release these guys in the worst economic crisis that we've had in many years. It's so gross. It's almost hard to talk about. And so, yeah, it's absolutely disgusting. It's disgusting. And he should be ashamed of himself. And, it should have been made more of a big deal. in the media and out there, we didn't make as big of a deal of it, but we really should have. Yeah, just disgusting.
Agreed. And just a couple things. One, you mentioned Dark Side of the Ring. I think I just mentioned this last week. For those of you who have Hulu, the Dark Side of the Ring series is now, you can stream that on Hulu. So I just thought I'd mention that for those who didn't get to watch it when it was initially on, because if you didn't have Vice TV. So that's out there for people. People should definitely check that out. It's a great watch. Two, it's amazing that the amount of money that this company has saved as a result of the pandemic of doing shows from the PC, where they haven't had to spend any money on that. So that's was interesting. That came out of the conference call. The big thing that was funny comment. Well, not funny, but just out of touch, which Vince from this conference call was, somebody asked, so why is AEW and NXT's ratings not have taken as big of a hit as Raw and SmackDown? Jay, did you see his comment on why this was?
I forget. I forgot what he said. I remember
because they were a newer product.
Oh yeah.
I'm sitting going, wait, if you're a newer product, you have less name brand visibility, so people don't know who you are. It would be harder for people to actually remember you exist when you have 25 or 27, however many years.
He was grasping there. We know he was.
I know, but it was just like
he was grasping. Yeah, no, that comment didn't make any sense to me at the time either. He was completely grasping for straws.
But it's going to be interesting to see how the third quarter, and I know for a lot of people the market number really it's a weird conversation to have, because us middle class folk, what do we know about the stock market? But it's an interesting conversation on how the business world takes a look at how WWE is thought of outside. And I guess the last comment in regards to that is, the other thing that came out of it is that apparently the rumor has been for a very long time was WWE Network was going to be going into a tier system, where that they were going to be, possibly doing like levels of like, pay-per-views would be on like one level, like different promotions like Evolve and Progress might be on another, and then there'd be a free level and different things. So they're basically, from what they were saying on the conference call, is there's going to be a free level and a $9.99 level. So the idea of having the upper tiers, at least for right now, that idea is dead. But brings to point the idea of what happened right before the pandemic. And Jay, this part I want to get your opinion on. Right before the pandemic, there was all these rumors about next quarter that the pay-per-views, especially like WrestleMania we spoke about when the podcast first returned, was that, might be going like to an ESPN Plus or a Peacock Network, one of these other places where the WrestleMania, SummerSlam might go somewhere else. So with the idea of hearing that there's not going to be a new tier and it'll just be free and what we have now, what's your thoughts on maybe the future of that still happening? And do you think that's a smart move of just having this free tier that has, the old stuff and, NXT, basically like documentaries and stuff, and then the tier that we're on that has like pay-per-views?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea that you have, I think the idea that, they could make money, Corey, just on having it be whatever free tier, which I don't really know, whatever the free tier is, and then having a pay-per-view tier, and then selling the big pay-per-view, Survivor Series, SummerSlam, WrestleMania, Royal Rumble to ESPN Plus or Peacock Network. The issue would be, are those places going to say, hey, we also want, Payback and Extreme Rules and whatever. So that would be kind of the thing. Again, I'm not a businessman. I have no idea. I'm totally kind of coming up with this on the fly. But I think financially, probably the most bang for their buck would be to make the 4 big pay-per-views a separate entity. But then maybe people would be like, well, I don't want the networks. I don't care about Extreme Rules. But I don't know if that would happen, because you're paying $10 a month, and $10 a month is not it's not nothing, but it's also like, kind of pocket change to a lot of people. So they might not lose people based on that too.
It's like a gym membership where you have it and you forget you forget that it's there, and every once in a while you watch it, and then if it's $10, it is what it is. But I think that a gym membership is $50, $60, $70. This is $10.
that's 2 lunches. I mean, basically, right? So it's
Planet,
like,
hey, Planet Fitness ever comes back, I guess that's $10. But but I guess the last point of this would just simply be and I understand pandemic is a different model right now, but is the AEW doing 4 pay-per-views a year, $50 or however much it is, $200 for the year if you buy all 4? That's one thing. I feel like they've gotten our money and they respect, and we've had this conversation, maybe going to the bar or whatever. They've earned the money. But is the WWE product good enough right now that if it's on ESPN Plus, like the UFC model, is the average person going to be, who's been for the last 6 years, been on the mindset of paying $10 a month, are they going to go back to the idea of paying $60 or $70 for a subpar product?
Well, remember though, they don't need everybody to do it, right? They need a portion of their audience to do that, and then they're still making money off them while also still making money on the network if people don't drop the network. So I think it's a gamble, but they'll probably get people to buy the pay-per-views because people have ESPN Plus, Peacock, people are getting that. So, I think they could probably still do it and people would still, people would still buy the pay-per-views. But you also would maybe alienate some of your audience. So I don't think there's something they could do now. I think there's something they can only do, if we get a vaccine and the vaccine works. Everyone's talking about getting a vaccine, but doesn't mean the shit's going to work. I actually signed up for a trial myself.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anything I could do to help this.
Breaking news.
Anything I do to help get rid of this thing, like I'm in for. But no. So if there is a vaccine, then I think they could look into it. Before then, no one's gonna pay $60 to watch what we're watching. I mean, I mean, again, it's the $10 thing of, well, $10, whatever, it's something to watch right now. $60, I think you'd be hard pressed to get people to pay that. Really hard.
Let's ask our buddy, former guest on the show, host of the Fantasy Hustle, Brian Drake. He basically is out. So
yeah.
But Jay, I think we covered a lot of great things this week. Spoke about some controversial subjects, but we handle them all with care and respect, which we do each week. I think it's a good time to close this one out. Let people know how they can follow us on all the social medias. Maybe not TikTok anymore, but let's bring it home.
I've never had TikTok. I know nothing about that. That is way past my age bracket.
Yeah, you mean we're not going to dance for 10 seconds or whatever?
I mean, Instagram is past my age bracket. I'm still trying to figure out how to do stories. Anyway, on Twitter, @WorkedShootPod. Twitter I do know about. @WorkedShootPod. Corey's @Paladin808 if you want to follow him. We are Worked Shoot Wrestling Podcast. Check us out on Facebook. Our Facebook page is Worked Shoot Wrestling Podcast. We have like 2 separate pages kind of thing, like a page where we put our podcast up and a page where it's more of a discussion-based thing. But just type in Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast on Facebook. You'll find us. We are on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere where you get your podcast. Leave us a review on iTunes, 5 stars, and we will read it on the air. Thanks.
Very cool. And, of course, you can find our sister podcast, You Don't Know Jackie, everywhere you listen to podcasts. Ladies Talking Comedy, all different subjects every week. Just did a couple of shows on the Netflix show Unsolved Mysteries. I believe they're doing a show on the Indian Matchmaker show coming up, I believe, next week. And a lot more great entertainment on that end. So you can check them out wherever you follow your podcasts. But as always, thank you very much for listening. Jay, as always, the final word is yours.
I think we're done here. See ya.